So I'm Lola, I'm the director of HR. I've been in NatCen for over 4 years now. I always say this, it feels like I've been in NatCen for 50 years, but I've only been in NatCen for over 4 years. So that's me. Let me start as I see you on my screen. So let me start with Chetna. If you just do a quick intro in terms of your role and how long you've been in NatCen.
So I'm Chetna. I've been so I'm the senior HR business partner here at NatCen. I've been in NatCen for almost decades. I've been here for 18 years, so a very long time.
Great, thank you. Yvonne?
I'm the Learning and Development Coordinator. I've been at NatCen for 10 years. I started in 2013, and in that time I've done a few roles, starting as an administrator in Brentwood as one of the operations administrators. I then moved into helping Justin with the information security side of things, and most recently I've moved into HR as the L&D coordinator.
Great, thank you. Mari?
Hello. So I have been at NatCen for over 15 years now, and for the past 5 years I've been the Director of Health and Biomedical Surveys on the social service side.
Great. Tulika?
Hi everyone, my name is Tadika. I'm a researcher in the Crime, Justice and Equalities team, and I've been at NatCen under a year, I think about 8 months. So yeah, pretty new, I think.
Does it feel like 20 years yet?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Debbie?
So I'm Debbie Collins. I work in the methods team at NatCen. I lead a group that looks at innovation and methodology, and I've been at NatCen for 25 years.
Ah, okay. There's no competition there yet, Debbie. All right, Kelly.
Hi everyone, I'm Helly. I'm a senior researcher in the household surveys team, and I've been at NatCen for nearly 3 years. So relatively new in the call, but yeah, feels like a long time.
Great, thank you. So let me start with Debbie, because interesting, you've been in NatCen for 25 years. Talk us through your experience in NatCen. How did you start in NatCen? What role did you start in NatCen? And if you think 25 years ago and to this present day, talk us through the changes you've gone through in NatCen.
Okay, so I actually did a work placement as part of my degree program at NatCen 10 years before I joined NatCen, pretty much. So in those days it was SCPR, and we all fitted within Northampton Square. Wycliffe, I don't think was even in occupation at that point. I think it was used for a different purpose altogether. So when I joined NatCen again, properly as an employee, I joined it because it had a reputation for doing really interesting research, methodologically interesting. It had a methods centre. I'd worked in a methods centre previously when I worked at OPCS, which is now the Office for National Statistics, and I was interested in that kind of thing. It had a really strong qualitative unit. It had pioneered qualitative research. The qualitative unit was run by Jane Ritchie, who I had a bit of a fangirl crush on, because she was just an amazing woman who had pioneered and championed qualitative research. I started in the surveys department. I worked in a team that did a range of different surveys, new evaluations of New Deal at that time. Also, I worked on a whole range of surveys because it was so small. You got to work on lots of different things. So I worked on birth cohort studies. I worked on the British Crime Survey. Yeah, it was an exciting time. There was lots of energy in the place. It was intellectually, interesting. We had a canteen at that point. You'd go and sit and have your lunch, and you could be sat on a table with the chief executive, who was Roger Jowell. You could be sat with, all of your, you would meet all of your colleagues really easily, and you were fed, which was very nice. and meant you didn't have to worry about what you were going to have for lunch that day. And I guess, yeah, over the years, NatCen has grown. It grew massively during the first 10 years that I was at NatCen, as a result of a kind of explosion in social research, policy research that happened in the UK at that time. And I had the opportunity to set up the questionnaire design and testing hub with a colleague of mine at that time, which was really exciting. And yeah, it was a fun place and still is a fun place to work.
That's useful. And you paint a picture of a NatCen that a lot of us may not know about. And I just wonder, in terms of the NatCen that is now and the NatCen that, you know, what's the difference, and what would you like to see back in the current NatCen, if anything?
Yeah, a lot's changed. The world's changed. I'm not a person who tends to dwell in the past. I always look forward. There were things that were good about NatCen at that time, I guess, because it was small. You got to know people more easily. But then again, you know, 10 years later or so, more than 10 years later, we moved to an open plan office, which nobody thought they would like while Northampton Square was being refurbished. And actually, by the time we left that building, about 18 months or so later, nobody wanted to leave. And that actually, the open plan worked really well. I guess, you know, when I joined NatCen, it wasn't I wouldn't say it was a particularly supportive of a lot of the female staff who worked there. The policies around being able to work part-time, for example, were pretty much non-existent. There wasn't really flexible working. Although there were a lot of successful women at NatCen, there weren't that many examples of women who had children and had a career in research and had children and managed to combine that. Maybe there were, and it just wasn't very visible. That's also possible. But yeah, there weren't the discussions that we have today about, you know, all of the issues of being a woman working through, you know, the life changes and how that impacts on you. So yeah, I think there's a mixture of things. It would be nice to have somewhere that we could all eat. I don't think that's possible within our current building, but that would be nice. I do think that those social interactions are really, really important. And I know I benefited hugely from having that kind of contact with all different people at all different levels in different parts of the organisation. And my sense is that that's more difficult today. I'd be interested in what Helly and Talika's experience is around that.
That's useful. Thanks very much, Debbie. I think naturally what I want to do is go straight to Mary, and I'll come back to Mary in a few minutes, because what I also want to do is to contrast, you know, Mary's experience of, you know, coming into NatCen and her experience with yours and given the length of service. But at the same time, also to Rika, who's actually quite new to NatCen, and how that experience is, you know, your experiences vary in terms of that. So Mary, you know, if I can ask you to talk through your experience of NatCen, coming into NatCen, and also, you know, as a female working in NatCen, what has your experience been in terms of your career, in terms of joining NatCen, and any sort of challenges to date, really?
Yeah, so I joined in 2008, so 10 years after Debbie, I think, by the sounds of it. So it definitely did feel a bigger organization at that point. I was a senior researcher in one of the surveys team, and just like Debbie, I guess, just working across all sorts of different things, all sorts of different surveys, various topics, really. My main passion has always been survey research methods. So that was the main thing that drew me to NatCen, because I was just so excited when I saw that NatCen existed. I thought, you know, look at that, a place full of people who are really excited about the things that I really enjoy doing. So from that perspective, it was really like almost like finding a family in a kind of professional way, where you feel like, you didn't have to explain what you are trying to do, but everybody's trying to do the same thing, and to remember the kind of same desire for quality and ultimately understanding what's going on in the society. I think moving on from that, I did become research director quite quickly after that, and have just continued to work on lots of different studies. I've had 2 career breaks. I've had 2 children while at NatCen, and I think when joining, it didn't feel like that was, I could see people with families, etc. But I could also see that most women were working part-time after that, and a lot of people kind of, maybe fewer people in the more senior positions, and then kind of the research director level potentially being where things stopped. And I was quite keen to make sure that I didn't get not stuck necessarily, but that there continued to be development opportunities and ways to improve, to learn leadership skills. So I remember coming back from my first maternity leave, I had to make quite a strong case to say that I don't want to just be leading a study and then be kind of content of that, but I actually want different types of opportunities as well, because I think that you don't kind of make that next step just like that. You have to learn to work with people and lead people, and to find this kind of more matrix opportunities. So I had to quite push to get those opportunities, but once I did, I think there was a surprise that I was asking for it, but once I was afforded those, I think that really helped to build up my skills and to be able to move on.
Was that a difficult thing to fight through to get that? Was that challenging, or was that just something that was quite easily received?
I mean, I did have to have conversations, and I did feel like people were surprised that I would want to do that. I think the expectation was that you come back from maternity leave and they ask, how many days do you want to work now, and you'd assume that you would want to reduce hours and probably just stay leading 1 or 2 studies. And I can see like how then it's quite difficult to move on from that kind of position. So I think it was just something that you had to push for. It wasn't a question that was kind of asked of you, like, what would you want that kind of thing as well? Yeah.
Would you have preferred if you didn't have to ask for it and somebody just came and talked to you about that, at that time?
Sorry, can you say again?
So would it have been a better scenario if somebody had to come to you, you return from maternity leave, and just sort of present you with that rather than you having to ask that? I
think it would have felt a bit more supportive environment, yeah, and also, yeah, I think that's probably the main point, isn't it? Is that you want to be seen as somebody who could potentially lead other people, regardless of your family situation, isn't it? So I was almost told like, oh, your life is going to change so much. Like before maternity leave, you don't know what you're going to want after this. Like, we know better, So yeah.
And how do you think that experience has changed since, in NatCen? If you think, how many years ago, and then we have, other women in NatCen who are possibly in the same situation as you now. Do you think that has changed?
Maybe a little bit, but I think if you look at the people in leadership position, it depends on the part of organization you look at. But I think there are still parts which are on leadership levels predominantly male, and that I don't know what's happening with specific people, but I'm not sure that we're necessarily asking those questions or making sure that the women are offered these opportunities as well, because not everybody will ask or feel like they are in a position where they need to push for it. But it's, even if somebody prefers to work part-time, that doesn't mean that they can't then also have opportunities to build up their skills in other areas. And it's just generally, as being a researcher, like, this is what you see. Once women have children, that's when men's careers kind of take off and women's careers stay flat. So yeah.
So you think that's, in some ways creates a barrier for women in leadership, because there's an assumption that when you have kids, that you don't want to do something more senior and you're just comfortable doing something part-time and not necessarily in a leadership position.
Or even it's just it's the assumption, but it's also just opportunities that are given to people, or whether you ask like, oh, do you want to do this like organizational activity, which might be quite demanding, or whether you just assume they're 3 days a week, they're not going to have time, that sort of thing.
That's just because what we're saying is, career ambition is not over after having kids, so it's not making that assumption that everybody is not just going to pursue that after having children.
Yeah, we don't ask the same question for men, for example, who also, have children.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go to Tulika. I mean, as the newest person in NatCen, let's put it that way, in this room, what has been your experience joining NatCen? And you heard the experiences of two colleagues who have been in NatCen for a long time. When you think in terms of you coming into NatCen and how long they've been there, what do you see your future in NatCen? In terms of what you can gain from what they both said today.
So definitely I'm quite new. It's been sort of 8 months since I've joined. I joined back in July last year, and I joined first as a field researcher. So I was doing that for about 2 months, and quite quickly, actually in September, I switched into the crime and justice team as a researcher, and it's been about 6 months with this team. So that has sort of been my journey. I really enjoy working in this team because I think coming from a social sciences background, getting into social research it felt like the natural next step for me. And so getting to do the kind of projects that I do in this team, I think I find the work quite interesting, and I find it quite engaging. And I think in terms of looking ahead or looking at my future in NatCen, I think there's two things that I kind of feel like are really that would really shape my journey. Firstly, I think obviously the work itself, I feel like I'm very aligned with the kind of work I'm interested in. So just that in itself is something that that would be the reason for me to continue here. But also secondly, I think looking at the number of women in the organization, this is something that I have not, or I mean, it's previously, this is not something that I have seen, but I think it's really inspiring to see that there are so many amazing women in all of our different departments and the kind of work that we all do. And it feels like a very, very inclusive space in that sense. And so I think that is something that would definitely make me stay. It is quite a different picture from what Debbie said earlier, from I think 20 or 25 years ago. But I mean, I guess NatCen is a very different space now, and that is something that really, really inspires me to stay, I think.
Could you see a future in NatCen in the next 25 years? Like Debbie?
25
I know
years.
that seems like a long time away, but yeah.
It is almost my entire life, but I don't think I could think that far ahead. But I mean, who knows? I mean, even if I sit here and say yes or no, I mean, things always change in the future. But at least in the next few years, definitely, I would like to stay.
Great. I hope we will hope, the next 25 years, you probably will be leading this session. I don't want to say
I should say that I did not envisage when I joined NatCen that I would still be here in 25 years' time. Like you, I, was just thinking, oh, great, this is an interesting job. So who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that, my main question was also around the fact that you can, whilst you may not be able to think ahead, 25 years from now, is that you see the potential, you see different career paths open to you in NatCen, and or you don't at the moment don't see it.
Yeah, definitely. I do see potential, and I do, like I said, I do feel like the space is inclusive, and I do feel supported in some ways. I do feel inspired by the people around me. I do feel like the work is engaging. So I feel like in all of these different ways, there definitely is potential. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So before I'm going to come back to Debbie and Mario on a question in particular, but I'll go to Heli first. So Heli, talk us through your experience, working in NatCen, the good, the bad, the the sort of the challenges and the positives in terms of your career to date in NatCen and where you see the future.
Yeah, sure. So I joined as a research assistant in 2021 in the health and biomedical team. And then after about 8 months, I think I was promoted to a researcher. And then after about another year, I was promoted, after being interviewed, I was promoted to senior researcher, but there was only a position in the health team. So I moved over team. And it was kind of daunting at first because it's quite a jump from researcher to senior researcher. And I was also doing it in a new team. So I was a bit nervous at first, but yeah, I definitely say to other people with that opportunity to just go for it and believe in yourself and push yourself and take those opportunities, because if you ask for the support, it's there to help you. And it was a really great opportunity, and I've learned a lot about a kind of different policy area. Both the teams that I've worked in have been predominantly female, as with most of the organisation, but there's only been a few men in each of the teams. So I suppose I've always found the environment to be really supportive, and a safe space to be a woman. But I suppose I know that might not kind of be representative of everyone's experience, but for me at least, that has been. But I suppose something that I think might be a challenge is that whilst we're representative of women and we're inclusive for women, just other groups that we might not be as inclusive of, and just making sure we're a safe space for different kind of identities or ethnicities, that kind of thing.
That's very useful as well. So again, like I said, whilst today is about International Women's Day, but it's also looking at overall, inclusiveness of all different things that we do, and all of that. And this plays a role in that as well. So, conversations like this will bring up issues that obviously we want leadership to hear and to take note of, and how we can support that overall as well. Great.
And I thought it was really interesting hearing what Mari was saying about when she was coming back from maternity leave. So I think a big part of what women can sometimes struggle with in business is just having the confidence and feeling like you belong in a place and that your voice is kind of deserved to be heard, and having the confidence to push yourself for positions where sometimes men might find that more easily, or just in society has kind of given them that confidence. So I think thinking about what we can do to kind of encourage and to support the development, but also that confidence that women have, that they can aim for those higher positions.
Great. Thank you very much. That's useful. And I'll come to that point in terms of things we can do in the future in terms of supporting women's career in NatCen, and particularly for people who return from maternity leave as well, in terms of how we support their development. And again, help to build that confidence after having been off from work for over a year sometimes, and sometimes just assuming that they're just going to come back as normal, or things that we can do to support that return and to enhance that development opportunities that they have within the organization as well. Great. Thanks very much for that. So I'm going to come to Yvonne, then come to Chetna last, and for a reason. So Yvonne, talk us through your experience of NatCen, because your background has, in some ways, before coming to NatCen is slightly different, because I learned that about you recently when you talked about where you were before. But talk us through your experience of NatCen to date, and how in some ways you've transitioned from different roles into into a new role.
Well, NatCen was more or less my first job back after taking a 5-year break to have my son. I did start working for the ambulance service for a very short time, but I was looking for another job because that wasn't me. And I got the job at NatCen as I say, an administrator within the Brentwood office, looking after the operations sort of organisation, the operations side of things. And I took that job particularly because I wanted just a job to come back to, because I had a young child, because he was just going to school, and it was just something that I knew I could do, and everything. And because of the type of person I am, I get involved in things that probably aren't something I should have got involved in, and then it opens up other doors. I think I like to say on a bad day it's probably considered nosy and interfering. On a good day it might be kind of helpful, but because of that I kind of get a bit involved in this, and as I say, because as Lola said, my background, I came from an IT background actually, so I had some IT skills, and these would get noticed, or you do that, and then Tina Parfitt, who was the director of IT at the time, had obviously seen sort of something in this and kind of pushed me to start helping on information security, which, although it isn't IT per se, it does have an IT element to it. So I started working with that and did that for a few years and enjoyed it, and kind of did that. And then I get to a point, and I think another way, for want of a bad word, is I get bored. So again, I get a little bit, and I don't want to move companies. I'm perfectly happy where I am. I was at my previous sort of company for 19 years, so it's not that I particularly want to go to loads of different organisations, but I just kind of want to try something new, and I get a bit fidgety, I guess. So, and that's what then got me to want this job. I did apply for another job within NatCen, which I didn't get, and then I spoke to Lola about this one coming up. And I thought, you know what, it is different, something completely different. There's a lot of organisational side of it, which I know I'm relatively good at, and that kind of thing. So again, I went for this, and it's just like it's an opportunity to do something different, and I've been very lucky to be able to do that. And I think it is because my personality is the sort of person that wants to try things that are different or a new challenge, but it's because I've had those opportunities within NatCen that has enabled me to do that, and I hope. I don't necessarily intend moving away from NatCen until possibly I retire, and I'm perfectly happy at doing that. But that's not to say I'll stay in this role. I'm sure that at some point I think, oh, I fancy trying that, and so that's really why I am where I am now.
It's good to know your ambition, just so you know, there's no plan for you to leave the HR team for now. So just saying. But that's useful. I think it's always interesting to hear stories about when women have gone on maternity leave, you had career breaks, and then you feel that you have something to come back to, and you still have skills that are quite relevant, obviously, to the work environment as well. So I'll come back to you in a minute on that question. But let me go to Chetna. Now, Chetna is an odd one, and not because she works with me, but Chetna is an odd one because how many HR directors have you had in NatCen so far?
Probably about 6.
Okay, so that's interesting, because the reason why I'm asking, because again, HR plays a crucial role, obviously, in the organization in terms of some of the things that we're doing around the people approach. But talk us through your experience in particular joining NatCen, when you joined NatCen, and where you've seen your career, the career path you've taken within NatCen, and why you've still stayed on at NatCen.
So, I mean, to be honest, I joined NatCen because I was really unhappy in the last role that I was. I was in the private sector, then I saw this role, and it was a non-profit, and so I joined like out of escapism almost. Came in for the interview, and I was like, oh my God, what is this place? The building was very old, so it was very different from the corporate side as well. I joined as a HR and training assistant as well, so I looked after all the training programs, but it soon became a very warm place as well. People genuinely cared about not just the work but about the people as well. So my journey is a little bit different, because as soon as I started, I fell pregnant. So at my probation end meeting, it was I remember my director thought I was going to say that I want to leave, but it was actually that I was pregnant, and that's why I was going to have another career break. So I hadn't even been at the organization for a year, and I left, I think, in 9 months as well. And when I did go for maternity leave, I didn't think I would come back, because I thought, well, I've only been there, they probably wouldn't want me back. They've just recruited me and I'm off again. I've costed them as well in terms of recruiting another person as well. And then my director at the time called me out of the blue, and she's like, we'd really love to have you back. What are your plans and everything? We'll make it work for you. So I returned. And because the HR department was so new, I think I joined when it was emerging as the HR team. So there was only 3 people there in the HR team. It was very paper-based, so I knew that I could actually add a lot of value and bring all my past experiences, and they were really open and willing to listen to my ideas and for me to really make the job role my own. So that's what I did. So I was an administrator for quite a number of years. It was quite good at the time because, like Yvonne, I wanted a job and it really fit nicely with my little one and the school drop-offs and all of that. And then I got to a point where I thought, you know what, I want to do something more. I went on another period of maternity leave, but this time it was a little bit longer because I had bereavement as well, and NatCen was really kind enough to give me an extra additional 6 months off. So I came back after 18 months, and I would say that was really, really difficult because my brain was really mush. I felt I was out of the organization for quite a while, but I was also out of the work world for quite a while. I came back to a fresh HR team who I hadn't met because we went through a huge restructure. And so that was really difficult. But I always believe that people come into your life at the right point in your life. And for me, it was that moment where it was like a fresh new start. It was a fresh new building. And that's when I thought I really want to develop in my career. And then I did my CIPD. And that's then really gave me that flexibility to balance both work, education, and life as well, and 2 young little boys as well. So yeah, I've seen it definitely change. And whilst I've been at NatCen for 18 years, it hasn't felt that long. I know it seems so long, 18 years, but it's been every year it's so different. The organization is growing. We've been through the peaks, we've been through the low moments, but I've learned an incredible amount, and I'm ever so thankful. And all the people that I've interacted with, they're just so intellectual, and you learn something new every day. Yeah. And also when I started, I felt I really stood out as well, because I think I could count on my hand how many Asian people I could see, and that was quite noticeable for me. It wasn't so noticeable where I worked before, but at NatCen it was. And I guess but I felt comfortable. And I think that's what was really nice about NatCen, that I could be myself when I came there. I didn't have to. It wasn't a culture of having to go to the pub after work because you had to fit in. I could say no, and that was fine.
That's useful to know. I think the one thing that resonates with me a lot is I've heard Mari, you talked about going on maternity leave and coming back, and Richard now, and to a degree, Yvonne, you said that yourself, is whether or not your experiences, and the experiences of other people are the same. In that sense, whether or not they've had the opportunity where they've gone on maternity leave and they felt able to come back to work and do that. And I don't know if you're aware of any of such experiences in that sense, whether there are other people who may not have had it as great as you have in terms of returning and being able to do that. There may not be. I'm just asking whether or not you're aware of any such.
Is that for me, the question?
Anyone. You, Yvonne, Mary, anybody, Debbie, anyone, really.
I think NatCen, from a HR point of view, I think we receive flexible work requests, and where possible, we try and make them work. There's a balancing between the business needs and also the individual needs as well. But I personally haven't had any flexible work requests, not many that have been declined. There's always been a negotiation on what could work on that side. I think in recent years, we're really more flexible in the hours. So whereas we were really rigid in terms of the core hours, I think, now times are changing, and we are flexible in terms of the hours that people work. And we're looking more at the output as well, but also at the customer focus as well on that.
Yeah. So you've all talked very positively about your experience of coming back, and I just wonder, for anyone, not necessarily Mary, Chetna, or Yvonne, is if any of you have sort of experienced any sort of challenges around career path opportunities that you may not have had as a result of being a woman or having been on maternity leave or anything. Has that happened at all? Have you experienced that at all?
For me, I haven't experienced it, but I have felt that I'm not good enough to be in that role because I've had breaks in employment, or I haven't got that knowledge because I've you know, I don't know that area as well as my peers who've been in that role for longer than I have. Yeah, I think, you know, that's been one of the highlights, one of the things that stood out for me. And that's why I think, you know, that's why I didn't really feel as ambitious, because I wanted to have that COPD to get that foundation of knowledge, and then I could say, okay, well, at least I know something. So it's believing in yourself as well, that you're more than just a mother as well. And also when I found when I came back from maternity leave, I had a new director, new team, but my little one just kept getting ill every month. I was off, and I just felt, oh my God, they're going to get rid of me now, because I was constantly having to phone up and say, I can't come to work, I can't do these interviews, I can't do that. But I had a really supportive director who herself didn't have children, but she's like, look, these things happen. And I think her saying it to me that it's okay, it helped me, and it helped me get, you know, just gain my confidence in that side.
Any other thoughts? Murray, Ron, Debbie, Sadika, any
I was just going to reply to what Chetna said about, you know, kind of not having the confidence to apply for things because you didn't maybe think you had all the skills. There was that thing that kind of broke the news, I think, a year or two ago, that women would apply for a job if they've got 100% of the requirements, and men would if they've got 50% or something. And I think, as well as what Yvonne was saying, that kind of one of your directors noticed that you were really good in that area and kind of pushed you to pursue it a bit more. That there obviously is stuff that we can do to encourage people to either develop areas where they don't have it, or women to kind of develop areas where they're missing it, or kind of highlight the skills that they've got and kind of give them the confidence that they can go for things that they might not believe they're able to do. Because obviously it was like, it works, and I think it's a way that we can build up the women in the organization.
And I think that's a very, very important point, because again, when we look at training, sometimes we look at technical training in terms of upskilling, in terms of qualification, but we don't look at the softer skills around building your confidence back and things like that that women might find helpful, having had career breaks for whatever reason, or sabbatical for whatever reason. And there are little things like that we can do that can actually help in terms of, you know, women returning to work and supporting their development and getting rid of barriers such as, you know, that we've described today. If I was going to go back to Mari and Debbie to a degree, and I keep going back to you two only because of how long you've been in NatCen to a degree, is what advice would you give to your other colleagues who might be, you know, just maybe someone like Tilika who's just joined NatCen, or other women as well, in terms of the varied career paths you've had and the length of time you've had and the opportunities you've had in NatCen? What advice would you give them?
I think the advice that I give to any new staff, but particularly the research assistants who join my team, for example, is to be, you know, to extend the role is what you make it. So being really proactive yourself and looking out for opportunities and putting yourself forward to do things, even if you don't necessarily feel like, 100% I've not done it before, I don't know if I can do it. Just asking for those opportunities yourself and seeing what you are interested in and what really motivates you, and then, you know, then just making sure that you get that opportunity, if it might be, you know, doing a little bit of work in another team, or you know, supporting the ethics committee, doing something organizational, etc. I think it's just being proactive about building your skills portfolio and you know, making sure that you have the skills that you need for the next step, really.
Any other thoughts?
So I think there is a part which is possibly about the individual, but I feel that we have a responsibility. I've worked for some shockingly bad female managers, not at NatCen, I might add. And I think of Caitlin Moran's kind of statement about don't eat your sisters. And certainly when I started out, there was this culture that women who got somewhere often had to do it on terms which were not really supportive of women. And I feel that it's really important that we support all, you know, you have an obligation as a manager to support your staff and to encourage them and to give them the confidence that, you know, Heli was talking about and Chetna was talking about, to put themselves forward for things and to actually create those opportunities. And I was fortunate when I came back from maternity leave, from having my first child, two of the kind of more senior women in NatCen had decided that there needed to be a questionnaire design and testing hub. And they'd already made part of the case for that and said to me, you know, we want you to develop this idea. And I would never have thought that that would have happened. I didn't think that, you know, that was going to happen to me. And I was fortunate, you know, and I recognized that I was fortunate. And, you know, but we have an obligation to really support people and create those pathways and help people see themselves in those roles. And that's the intersectional point that I think Heli was making as well, that it's really important that we do that and we create those things. And one of the things that's tricky, I think, for people who have caring responsibilities, be they children or caring for other people, is that some of the things that get you noticed, some of the things that, you know, create those networks often happen outside of the times that you can work. And that's a real limitation then. It limits, you know, your network, it limits your kind of wider knowledge of the area, it limits kind of, you know, your awareness of things that go on. And things have got, I think people are more mindful now about, you know, thinking about when they schedule seminars and things of that nature. But there are things that you miss out on when you can't do things outside of your working hours. And that's not inflexibility. That's just because you've got these other responsibilities that need that you have to prioritize and take your time for. So I definitely think that there's more things that we can do, as you were saying, Lola, around soft skills development and supporting each other to help, you know, ensure that, you know, we have the leaders of tomorrow, and that we create a kind of rich, diverse organization.
And it's also getting non-female colleagues to support that as well, because again, from what most of you have said, the role of line managers plays a key role in terms of that. The role of leadership, you know, there's a key role for leadership around helping and supporting the return of women back into work and developing their careers as well, giving them the opportunity. So it's an inclusive thing, not just something that women just have to do, you know, women supporting women, but everybody obviously supporting, you know, the careers of women within NatCen and supporting, you know, the development opportunities and helping to overcome some of the barriers and the challenges that, you know, that comes as a result of that. So I have some very, you know, fun questions to ask you, and which I'm quite keen to do, is if you were a CEO today, if there's one thing, you know, let's assume it's Mary, Debbie, Tulika, Heli, Yvonne, Chetna, you're CEO today. What is the one thing, just one thing that you would do to make life easier, or to make the, you know, the experience of women easier in NatCen as a workplace? Yvonne, do you want to go first?
I don't know, because I was thinking I'm probably going to say something really silly. I mean, I think what's really worked well over the last couple of years, and probably one of the best things ever to have come out of the pandemic, is this hybrid working. And it's given us hours in the day back that we didn't have because we're not traveling. As from a personal point of view, I mean, my husband's back at work now, but when he was at home, he gained an additional 4 hours because of traveling in a day. And I think for women, that's really great, because it allows us to do stuff that when we're traveling, we can't do. And I mean, I enjoy cooking. It gives me more chance to do cooking at home. And I just think, I would keep with this hybrid model, you know, because I think it really does benefit a lot of people, not just women, but a lot of people.
Right, thank you. Tulika, you're CEO for the day. What would one thing that you change or you do?
I think definitely making sure that women with all of their different kind of needs and their different backgrounds, that everyone feels supported. And I definitely see that in a lot of the younger kind of workforce that we have at NatCen, that there are a lot of different people from different kind of backgrounds, or people from different experiences. But I think one thing that comes to my mind is how do we make sure that they feel supported, and how do we make sure that not only getting them in, but also making sure that they are able to continue their careers within a certain organization, or say for NatCen, in NatCen, for example. So I think take a closer look at that, take a closer look at making sure that women, all kinds of women, do feel supported.
Great. Kelly?
Yeah, I think I'd second that.
You have superpower. You have, you have to, to transform to change anything. What would you do?
Yeah, I think I would just create safe spaces for all the different types of people that work at the organization, be that like women or different genders or identities, so that they can have like conversations like this about what could be better. Because I think we can only just speak as our own experience, but having those safe spaces that people from different backgrounds can also speak in and talk about their concerns. Like, this has been such an interesting conversation, and it'd be great for them to carry on for all the different types of people that we have.
Thank you. Chetna?
I think, like everyone, the hybrid working is definitely to continue, but also the flexibility in the hours and the way that we work them would also, yeah, I'd second that as well. Just more flexibility in terms of perhaps later evenings or earlier mornings, depending on when our creativity is as well, when we get some downtime as well with the kids and stuff, so we can actually think as well. Yeah.
And Debbie?
So I think I would tackle the money issue, because I think that there are financial issues that limit, and those play out. There are gender issues there with pay equalities. I know that the great strides are being taken in that regard, but there are still issues around the fact that, for example, men and women don't get equal maternity paid leave. The paid maternity leave is actually not that long. When I was on maternity leave, it was 3 months full pay, and then 3 months half pay. I had to come back after 6 months. I couldn't afford to take any more time off. And I think that that would be my thing if in the fantasy world I were chief executive.
The role is vacant, Debbie, at the moment. Great. Thank you very much. Is there anything anybody would like to add to this session just before I round off? Anything you'd like to add? Anything, any burning thing you might want to say? Anything at all?
I think, Lola, I would say that I think it's really important to have men in that conversation as well. So
Absolutely.
it's all for us to have that discussion, but actually it's two sides of things. I think what Debbie was alluding to, like if men also took longer breaks around when their children are born, like, just leveling the playing field in that sense, and also for them to be aware, like how they behave and how that might affect their female colleagues is equally important.
And that's definitely a key thing, because again, as I said at the beginning of this session, that yes, today might be a day that we're celebrating women and all that, but it's not just about women. It's also about involving men in the conversation, because they're part of that. They're part of the changes that we want to see. It's fundamental that they're also part of that conversation. And again, we don't need a special day to do this all the time. I think it's good that we're doing this, but it's raising that awareness, but also having that conversation as an ongoing thing that we do across the business, where we're raising all of these issues and highlighting, not just raising them, highlighting them, and then obviously having something impactful in terms of change, that we want to see in the organization. And I think, it's not just something that's down to HR to do. It's something that, everybody at every level should be part of in doing that. So I just want to say, thank you for this. Again, it's a 1 hour session. I wish we could have, 2-3 hours to continue this conversation. So I'm sure there's so much will come up on that. But the one advice that I obviously want to leave everybody with, and I hope that you share that with any woman you come in contact with, obviously in NatCen and outside of NatCen as well, is that to always remember that we shouldn't let being a woman hold us back in our career, regardless of our personal circumstances. Although I'm not ignorant of the fact that sometimes some of these things happen in organization, but it's not letting you being a woman be a barrier to obviously any sort of career path you might want to take within NatCen, or you desire to have children, or desire to to do anything that you do as a woman, not to do that, and just to stay authentic. And Mary said something that I liked at the beginning, is just keep pushing through. Don't just keep pushing it through. So I think you said it in a particular way that I liked. I can't remember how you said it about just being authentic, just push through. I don't think we should get to a point where we accept what we're given. Sometimes we're much more than that. Is keep pushing through and ask for more, and don't feel that there's a limit to what you can do because you're a woman within NatCen. And just to remember that, and just stay authentic, and don't again, don't feel you have to become a superwoman. In some ways, I think sometimes that's what we do to ourselves as well, that we feel that we have to compete, we have to be a superwoman to be able to do everything. But just let's be our best, and just be bold and courageous in terms of some of the changes that we want to see through, and let's not keep quiet about it. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been wonderful to listen to you, and hopefully this conversation continues.